In a quiet village in southern Spain, a 7-year-old girl vanished without a trace. For a decade, her fate was a mystery until a routine police call shattered the silence and exposed a horror that would haunt an entire nation. This is the story of Anna, the girl who was kept like a pet for 10 years. A disappearance in broad daylight. It was a peaceful spring afternoon in 2008, when Anna, a shy 7-year-old, was playing just outside her family's home in a small, sun-soaked village near Seville. Her mother stepped inside for only a few minutes. She returned. Anna was gone. There were no signs of struggle, no witnesses, no evidence, just a child who seemed to have vanished into thin air. The property was typical for the area. A neat house with a high fence, always closed, but never locked. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew each other and strangers stood out. Yet on that day, no one saw Anna leave, no one heard a scream, and no one noticed anything unusual. Police and volunteers scoured the countryside, searching wells, ravines, and abandoned buildings. The investigation turned up nothing. Neighbors, family, and acquaintances were questioned, even subjected to polygraph tests. No one aroused suspicion. Weeks turned into months, and the trail went cold. Anna became another name on the long list of missing children. The village forgets, but her mother never does as time passed. Anna's disappearance faded from public memory. The case was officially suspended, her name relegated to police archives. Only her parents refused to give up, clinging to hope as they plastered missing posters and pleaded with journalists for help. Years passed. The world moved on. Anna's mother, haunted by loss, became a fixture in the village, her eyes reflecting a decade of waiting for news that never came. For the rest of the village, Anna became a ghost story, a mystery no one expected to solve. But the truth was closer than anyone could have imagined. An ordinary call, an extraordinary discovery 10 years after Anna vanished. In 2018, police received an emergency call from a woman living in a rundown house 20 kilometers from Anna's village. Her adult son had become aggressive, forbidding her access to the second floor. Fearing for her safety, she called for help. The house was nearly invisible from the road, surrounded by thick brush. Neighbors described the son as withdrawn and odd, rarely seen outside. He had no job, no criminal record, and no friends. The mother, too, kept to herself. Police had never been called to the address before. When officers arrived, they found the woman bruised and terrified. She explained that her son had always forbidden her from going upstairs, but she had tried that day, triggering his violent outburst. The man was detained without resistance, but he refused to explain his behavior. The attic of horror. During a routine search of the home, police heard strange noises coming from the attic, a space sealed off with wooden planks and accessible only with difficulty. The officers pried open the barricade, expecting perhaps an animal. What they found instead shocked even the most hardened investigators. In the darkness, amid filth and squalor, was a young woman, emaciated, filthy, and terrified. Unable to speak or make eye contact, she cowered in the corner, surrounded by dirty rags and a stained mattress. The only food was cheap, unwrapped scraps. The air was stale, the small window boarded up, and there was no sign of clothing or hygiene products. The girl's age was estimated at 16 to 18, but her behavior was that of a much younger child. She had been kept in total isolation, deprived of sunlight, conversation, and even the most basic human dignity. She did not utter a word, communicating only in gestures, and recoiled from any human touch. The DNA revelation with no identification and no missing persons reports matching her description from recent years. Police turned to DNA. The sample was rushed to the national lab. Days later, the results stunned the investigators. The girl was Anna, the child who had disappeared a decade earlier. The news broke like a thunderclap across Spain. Anna had never left the region. She had spent 10 years imprisoned in an attic, less than a half-hour's drive from her family. The man behind the crime. The suspect, now in his early 30s, had never drawn police attention before. As a teenager, he'd been diagnosed with behavioral disorders, instability, aggression, antisocial tendencies, but was never institutionalized or treated. He spent most of his adult life isolated, rarely leaving the house. His mother, it turned out, had never entered the attic and claimed complete ignorance of Anna's presence. Investigators pieced together the day of the kidnapping. The man had driven an unregistered car to Anna's village, snatched her in minutes, and vanished. The car was hidden and never seen again. For the next 10 years, Anna remained his captive, invisible to the outside world. But what was his motive? Psychiatrists concluded that this was not a crime of sexual predation or ransom. Instead, the suspect displayed what experts called obsessive controlling behavior, pathological need for total domination over another human being. Anna was not just a prisoner. She was treated as less than human, a voiceless creature kept in near-animal conditions. Anna's condition. A life stolen, Anna's physical and psychological state was dire. Doctors diagnosed her with severe deprivation syndrome. She could not speak, could barely perform basic tasks, and was terrified of human contact. Her mental development was frozen at the level of a 6-year-old. She had to relearn everything: how to talk, how to move, how to trust. A dedicated team of doctors and psychologists began the slow process of rehabilitation. For months, Anna communicated only in gestures and sounds. 3 months after her rescue, she spoke her first words. The breakthrough was celebrated as a miracle by her caregivers and her mother, who immediately recognized her daughter despite the ravages of captivity. The trial that followed was one of the most closely watched in Spanish history. The defendant's lawyer argued mental illness, but a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation found him fully competent, emotionally cold, but aware of his actions and their consequences. The court found him guilty on all counts: kidnapping, illegal deprivation of liberty, and prolonged cruel treatment. He was sentenced to 25 years, the maximum allowed by Spanish law, with no possibility of parole or sentence reduction. He was barred from all contact with the outside world, including his mother. The long road back on his ordeal did not end with the verdict. Her recovery was painstaking and slow. She struggled with basic tasks, was frightened by ordinary sounds and mistrusted strangers. Her mother, seeking a fresh start, moved them to a new town, far from the village that had become a symbol of their suffering. For Anna, every small achievement, brushing her hair, writing her name, speaking a sentence, was a victory. Her story, once headline news, faded from the public eye as she and her mother chose privacy over publicity. Doctors are cautiously optimistic. Anna may one day lead an independent life, but the scars of her captivity will never fully fade. The lesson of Anna's silence, the case of Anna, forces society to confront uncomfortable truths. How could a child disappear in broad daylight and remain hidden for a decade so close to home? How often do we overlook the oddities and silences in our own neighborhoods? Anna's captivity was not hidden in some distant city, but just above the line of sight in an attic no one thought to check. Her story is a chilling reminder. Sometimes the most terrible things are closer than we think. Hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to finally look up.